Welcome in to the Hoth Hangout podcast. We're glad to have you here joining us for this one. Today, we've got something we've never really done before. We're going to be covering a few different things, but mainly taking a look at some Star Wars comic books, particularly the High Republic series. So, we're really excited to get into that today. But before we do, of course, if you are not subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, definitely check us out there for the video version of every podcast, as well as our reactions to new shows when they do go live and come out. We will be reacting to the Ahsoka show as well here in just a couple of weeks. You can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. And definitely check us out on all the social medias as well: Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at Hoth Hangout on each of those. We've got a couple new shorts coming here in the next week or two, so be on the lookout for those on each of those platforms. And again, we're going to be discussing mainly the High Republic today. We got a little bit of news to get into before all of that. But before we get into anything we're talking about today, Joey, how are you doing, man?
Doing well. I am excited for the adult version of a book report.
That's what it
they're
felt
about to
like.
give.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was reading through these comics, I definitely felt like I was like, all right, I gotta soak all this in so I'm able to speak about it somewhat intelligently on the pod. So even if it's not quite intelligent, we learn together. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And we should also note that like today's podcast is not only kind of a new experience for us, and that this is the first time we're doing as Joey noted, sort of a book report style thing over a series of comics. But it's going to be a learning process for us too. Especially, at least I won't speak for you, Joey, but this is really the first time that I've had like a deep dive into some Star Wars comic books in particular. I've
Mhm.
read novels before, but this is
Right.
really my
Yeah.
first taste of the comics. Especially the High Republic era is something I'm just now really getting into for the first time.
Hmm.
So it's
Nice.
gonna be a fun one today. I'm gonna be learning a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah. Same here.
Well, before we discuss our comic book series of choice, which of course was the High Republic era, we wanted to go over some news and information as we typically do towards the beginning of every podcast. First of which, we wanted to start with something High Republic related in terms of that news, and that the third phase of High Republic book and comics were recently announced. This will consist of 5 books and 5 comics in total, and amongst these, I guess 3 of the books and 3 of the comics will be High Republic related. Is that right, Joey?
Yeah, that's right. So the at San Diego Comic-Con, they had a publishing panel, I believe, and this is where they had shown all the different covers for here. So if you are watching the YouTube video version of the podcast, you could see a couple of them here. As we stated, yeah, there are 3 books, 3 comics, all taking place in the Phase 3. For those who don't know, Phase 2 actually takes place before Phase 1, kind of a prequel type thing. But Phase 3, I think, happens after all of that. So, pretty exciting stuff. There's the usual High Republic comic. There is an adventures comic that they have as well. There's the one adult novel. Then there's a YA novel as well as like more of a children's type of novel. I think the one that's showing here might be the children's one,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and in addition to those, they also have a couple of more informative books. They'll have like an encyclopedia, which is really cool. I always love these like
I was gonna say the
encyclopedia.
same
Yeah,
thing. I love
yeah,
these.
it's always really cool to learn, get a little bit more of a deep dive. So this one we're showing here some pages from the High Republic Encyclopedia. But they also have things like the Dawn of the Rebellion, a visual guide, kind of going into more broad Star Wars content and such. So, but of the 10 that are being that were showcased, as we said, 6 of them are High Republic related. The others are just kind of more Star Wars general media. So yeah, exciting, more and more Star Wars. We love it.
Yeah, and a few of those images that we just got to look at, not to tease too much of what we're going to be talking about at the end of the episode, but saw some familiar faces that we got
Oh,
a chance to read about this week, so
yes,
including the
sir.
one that's on the screen right now if you're watching the
Yeah.
video version of the podcast. So
Yes.
again, we're excited to talk about that. Excited to hear that there is more High Republic content coming our way very soon with the third phase announced at San Diego Comic Con. Also announced at San Diego Comic Con, which is very much, I know, in Joey's wheelhouse. and a Rebels related, we could
Mhm.
say, perhaps even Ahsoka related announcement,
Mhm.
in
Absolutely.
regards to Hasbro revealing new reveals. Is that correct?
Yeah, tons of action figures. We've got Sabine with the Ahsoka series Sabine with the short hair, modeled after the Natasha Leo Bordizzo, I think her name is. Um, and of course we have Ahsoka, the Rosario Dawson version of Ahsoka. So we have, and I think that would be more up your alley there. Is that a Darth Revan? I'm
It
not quite
looks
sure.
like Revan there in the middle,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so they got a little bit of the Legends characters there as well. So yeah, so we've got those. We've got some other figures here is more of a holiday spirit type of thing. You see an Ewok, you see R2, I think Boba Fett in a blue Jawa with a, I forgot what do we call these creatures? I can't remember. Something monkey. I can't remember the name of it.
The one that sits next to
Yes,
Jabba.
it's the Silesius crumb species, but with the Jawa, showing their holiday spirit in the red and greens there. So those are fun. They normally come out every year with some of those. In fact, I'm wearing a little bit of a Christmassy thing here. Christmas
I
in
saw that.
July, a little Christmas in July today. Yeah.
Kawa
Um,
Kawakian, by the way, is the
Kowakian. Thank you.
species name.
There you go. So you got some of those and even some more images here. You've got a KX unit also playing with looks like the BD1 unit, I think. And yeah, so just more fun, more Empire things. But the the crown prizes of what I think of the reveals were the the Chewbacca from the
Is
holiday
that
special.
from Earth Day or Life Day, whatever it's
Life Day.
called?
Yeah, it's from Life Day. So, very I don't think I've seen there might have been one other figure in the past that's been like this, but to have them re-release it if they did, or if this is the first time they're releasing, I think it's actually pretty funny. So that's a pretty cool figure. And also a very hot item that will be coming out will be the Ghost ship from the Rebels series with I don't think it comes with Hera, but it is a pretty massive piece. I think it's as big as if you've seen those larger model sets of the ships of the like Millennium Falcon. So they're on a much bigger scale. I think this one's going to run for about $500. So that's going to be
Ooh.
definitely a big one. It also comes with the smaller Phoenix 2 transport. That like they fly in as well. So I think that actually detaches, and so
That's cool.
it's a pretty cool piece. I don't know if I can hide enough money in order for me to get it, but I would love to. This would be something that I'd love to get. Fun fact: the Lego version of the Ghost is one of like one of the most highly sought after ships in Star Wars for some reason.
Really?
It's an older one, obviously. It's when Rebels came out. When did Rebels come out?
I wanna
2012?
yeah, I was gonna say, like, between 2010 and 2012. I'll look it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way Lego does it, they don't, they'll have it for release for a while and then they'll discontinue the series and but the Ghost one is very highly sought after.
We were early. 2014 was the debut of
2014.
Rebels, yeah.
Really? Feels like it
Yeah.
was earlier.
Doesn't it feel like it was longer ago? Yeah.
Definitely does. So
That
yeah,
is really
so
cool, though. I
yeah,
like
so
that a lot.
yeah, so if the image that we have on the screen, Hera is, I believe that's the 6-inch Hera figure. So you can imagine how big the actual Ghost ship is going to be if that's a 6-inch figure. I think it might be the 3 3/4 inch figure, but either way, it's a pretty massive piece, and can't wait to not buy it and see everyone else have it.
Hey, if Hera doesn't come with it, do I at least get Chopper with it if I purchase it?
You would think so. You would
Mm,
think so, but I don't know.
maybe Zeb is hiding on there somewhere.
Right.
Again, pretty cool, announcements coming out of San Diego Comic-Con. That's somewhere have you ever been to Comic-Con? I don't know if I've asked you before.
I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con, no.
Okay.
But I've been to
We
like local what they call the Wizard
Sure,
World.
yeah.
There's a C2E2 here, so I never the San Diego one though.
Live from San Diego, 2024
Come
Comic-Con,
on, let's do it.
Hoth Hangout Podcast.
All right, let's do it.
Maybe someday. We gotta do Star Wars Day, and
Yep.
we gotta do Comic-Con, so
Yes. Gibbo's coming. Gibbo's coming with.
yes, Gibbo's definitely coming with. We gotta get one of those, like, traveling buses where we can, like, set up some, Shure microphones and
Yep.
do a traveling podcast episode
I'm
or
sure.
something.
I'm sure. I mean, they got Airbnbs. They got to have some type of traveling podcast rentals, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in this
yeah.
day and age.
Honestly, it would not shock me if that's actually something that people
And
sell somewhere.
if not, we got a new business coming in then.
Yes. Yeah, no one steal our idea, patent pending. Our last piece of news before we start talking about the High Republic comic that we read for this week's episode is near and dear to my heart. Have you seen the John Wick films? Are you as big of a
Yes.
Keanu Reeves fan as I am?
Yes. I haven't seen the last one, but I've seen
Oh, the
the other
fourth
three.
or the
Yeah, I've
which one
seen.
just came out?
I
Fifth,
think the fourth one. The fourth.
4 or 5, whichever one just came out.
Yeah.
It was so good, arguably the
Is it
best
okay?
one yet.
Oh, really? Okay,
So,
nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you get a chance to watch it,
No, I'm a big
um,
Keanu Reeves fan, all the way back from Speed and Bill and Ted. So yeah, I'm. This is exciting news for sure.
yeah, we got news yesterday. Still, I don't know how much of this can be considered rumor and how much of it is like confirmed as he is in the show. It's my understanding that it's the latter, that he is definitely making a cameo in
Hmm.
the Acolyte, which debuts. I don't know if we have a date either, other
Hmm.
than 2024. But that Keanu Reeves, Mr. John Wick himself, will be uh, portraying someone. We don't know if it's gonna be a Jedi. I think that's the rumor right now.
Hmm.
But he will be portraying someone in The Acolyte coming next year, which is pretty cool. I just John Wick in Star Wars, Keanu Reeves in Star Wars is just like
Right.
I feel like I'm living in a simulation right now.
Yeah, and as Gibbo mentions here, Carrie Ann Moss is also in it, so Matrix reunion,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
very cool. I'm pretty sure he's playing Neo. I mean, that's probably he's actually in the Matrix, but somehow in the Acolyte, So it's going to be some type of crossover event.
Yeah. The Acolyte was just this convoluted design to make a crossover with The Matrix.
Right, exactly.
It's canon now. It's all canon. Uh, yeah, I wish we had a date for the Acolyte. Like 2 years ago when they announced all these, like Andor, Acolyte, Ahsoka. Ahsoka was the one I was the most excited for, but this was the one I was probably the second most excited for.
Hmm.
So, this is just like building more and more hype for each of these shows, which is funny because it's almost like a little bit contrary to what we talked about in last week's episode where Bob Iger wants to
Right.
like kind of roll things back. It feels like
Hmm.
now we're getting the ball rolling for the show after Ahsoka even already.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
um,
I'll be
mm,
interested in. Well, takes place during the High Republic, right? That's also a
yep,
High Republic show.
yep,
So this is
yep,
this is an all High Republic episode apparently.
yeah. I want to say this takes place like I want to say it's like 100 or 200 years before like the prequels era.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
feel
that's
like
that's
they have released that information as to what the
yeah,
exact number of years is, but I think it's
yeah,
roughly that.
nice.
Um, Keanu Reeves joining the Star Wars universe. We love to see it. Well, until Keanu joins the Star Wars universe and becomes a perhaps key central figure in a High Republic timeline, we have many books and novels and comics, especially, to look to during the High Republic timeline for our viewing and reading pleasure. Uh, we this week focused on the High Republic comics. I think one of the reasons we focused on this, full transparency, this was definitely one of the ones that I owned already, but just had not read before. But it's also a time period that I think collectively, prior to reading this, would you say we both cumulatively lacked the most knowledge on this
Oh,
time period?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and still do.
Yeah, yeah, and still do, to be fair. So for those of you that are watching or listening to this episode and are like big High Republic fans, if we like mess up a name or we screw something up in terms of chronology or whatever the case may be, feel free to point it out to us down in the YouTube comments. We'd love to hear from you and learn more about the High Republic era. As a very general overview, prior to discussing and talking about these, we briefly mentioned it already, but the High Republic era is that takes place prior to The Fall of the Jedi, AKA like the prequel era. And I want to say it's like Joey, you might be able to correct me. I've always understood it to be like a 500, maybe even 1,000 year period
Oh,
before. Perhaps
oh,
it's only closer to 200
yeah,
though.
I think it's closer to 200 from what I've read. Once again, this is a perfect time for the YouTube comments to correct us, but I believe
Right.
it. I believe I read it was around the 200 mark.
Right. Well, I guess the second phase, the prequel phase, which Joey mentioned, takes place in 382 BBY.
Mm,
And so we can like subtract what 20 years from that, and then so maybe
mhm,
350-ish. Does that sound
mhm.
about right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So basically, before the prequels, a couple hundred years before the prequels, lots of the characters that I was introduced to and that Joey was introduced to through reading this are characters I had close to zero, if not zero, knowledge about these characters before meeting them. So it's gonna be a fun episode. I don't know, if you want to give any more background on the High Republic, or
Sure.
particularly, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, there is a novel on the screen called Light of the Jedi, which is sort of a precursor, in terms of timeline to the series of comics we read for today.
Mhm. Yeah, so basically the High Republic is a publishing initiative, with a bunch of novelists, a bunch of creators. They actually had gotten into writing rooms together to map out this entire High Republic era, which I thought was super cool. You've got Charles Soule, you got Justina Ireland, Claudia Gray. There's a lot of names very familiar to the Star Wars reading Star Wars reading fandom. So it is broken up into three phases: phase one, two, and three. Phase one is the Light of the Jedi, kind of the start of it all. Phase two is the Quest of the Jedi. That is actually a prequel to phase one. And then phase three is the Trials of the Jedi, and that is the books and comics that we just mentioned earlier in the news section. So it's that's kind of like the general overview of like how, and all those phases are not necessarily chronological. Obviously, it's more of just like when they are released. So yeah, it's a pretty fun. It was very cool when it was announced. I want to say it was announced maybe around 2019, I believe, at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago. I think that's when things started, coming to fruition. People were talking a little bit more about it. I think they had panels there as well. I could be wrong. It might have been the year before, but definitely around that time period. And yeah, just like you said, 200 years, 300 years before Phantom Menace, lots and lots of Jedis. You could see in this book image here. There's four four Jedi right in this image here, and you'll see there's lots of Jedis in the comic that we're about to talk about in a little bit too. So, but shout out to a particular website that has helped me a ton try to understand the chronology and the reading order of things. It's called utini.com. They are pretty popular and well known in the Star Wars reading fandom. Helps out a ton with understanding the timelines of everything. They have a pretty cool. Me and Ben were just looking at their site. There's a pretty cool uh, layout of how they lay out the order of all the books and all that. So yeah, go check them out. We'll probably drop them link in our show notes for that as well. So, but yeah, so that's kind of a high level discussion or the description of the High Republic, and it's like you said, it's a whole era that you and I just have no idea about, and that's kind of fun. I think it's a fun thing to dive into and try to figure out
Yeah, it's
together,
like
and together too. I think that's the big
yeah.
thing is we've kind of done all of our movie watching and TV show watching, you know, uh, before this, but now this is something that we can kind of jump into together and actually have like little book discussions and stuff about. It will be pretty fun.
I feel like it's akin to the feeling of just two people going into like a original trilogy film. Like two people walking into A New Hope, never having seen Star Wars and trying to
Hmm.
like digest and understand and really make sense of who the characters are, like
Right.
what their goal is. So it
Hmm.
you kind of, especially with reading, it's not like we're so trained as a culture now to like want to watch and see things in order to
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but with reading it's I think it's harder for me personally. I
Hmm.
found myself through, so the comic series that we read was 15 total, chapters, I don't know if you wanna call
Yeah,
them.
issues, yeah.
Issues, yeah. And I felt like for the first issue or 2, I was like, "Who is this person? Like, what are they
Right, yeah.
trying to do? Whose master is who? Like,
Yeah, sure.
who has this job versus that
Have
job?"
you had you read, like, comics as you were when you were growing up? Was that kind of your
Yeah.
thing?
So,
Okay,
ironically, I have not really ever gotten into Star Wars comics. My
okay,
main comic book interest growing up was really only Batman.
okay.
And so that is kind of like my background of comics. I wouldn't say I
Mhm,
was, like, incredibly into them,
mhm.
as I really didn't get into that phase probably more until, like, high school time, not when I
Got you.
was really young, but,
Mhm,
so yeah, no real Star Wars comics experience prior to this, just
mhm.
Batman comics when I was in high school.
Right.
What about
Got you.
yourself?
Archie, the
Yeah.
Archie and
Well,
Jughead,
yeah,
but
I guess that's for me too,
I
yeah.
was much I loved going to the local grocery store and getting, like, the little booklet of the little book of, Archie comics. Not like the big paperback ones or just like the little thick booklet of it, whatever, so
Mhm.
that was probably my extent for a long time, but then when they started doing more of the Star Wars in the Disney era, that's when I started collecting them a little bit. I have, like, the whole, like, there's, like, a Kanan series that I really
Mm.
enjoyed, reading. There's a Darth Vader one, Doctor Aphra is one of them as well. So, definitely, like, I growing up, it wasn't really something on my radar. It was something I would see every now and then. I knew comic book stores existed, but I never really went in them. But when Star Wars came through on the Disney side, and then they started, creating more content in comics, I'm like, okay, well, I want to know a little bit more about this character here, and just characters that you haven't seen yet, like Doctor Aphra, like I said. So I think just like we've said time and time again, there's so much content out there for you. You just gotta go. You literally just have to turn a corner and look for it.
Yeah, I think for us who, we're lifelong Star Wars fans, um, to have, like, no pun intended, like, unexplored regions of the galaxy
Yeah.
that are there and accessible. I don't know if you wanna do, like, not hashtag sponsored, a plug for the app that you showed me,
Oh yeah, sure.
but I love that thing.
Yeah. So yeah, the Marvel Unlimited app is what me and Ben had used. Again, not sponsored, but we basically they have this huge library of, like, mostly all of the Marvel comics that are in existence, whether it's Iron Man or Avengers, and and of course Star Wars is now a part of that as well. So it's pretty incredible. I think it's like if you do month by month, it's like $10 a month, but if you do the whole year, it's a cheaper rate. So yeah, that's what we use for that. And I've been waiting for us to finally start about talking about comics before I, like, got into a yearly plan. I'm like, all right, now we can now I can do it. It'll be worth it now. But yeah, very cool.
I will say though, I did, get the free trial, and I'm probably gonna end up getting the annual subscription,
Yeah.
but there is something that I'm the same way with books. I love having, like, the
Yes.
physical comic in my hands,
Hmm.
and so I don't know if that will, deter me from keeping my subscription or not, but
Yeah.
it is amazing for those, especially those that like electronic,
Hmm.
reading or comic book reading. I used it for kind of half of what I read.
Hmm.
I went back and forth
Nice.
between the hard copy and the electronic copy, so, check it out, Marvel Unlimited, if you're interested in, picking up some comic book options. So, let's move, I guess, into the High Republic and what we read.
Yeah.
But what was your first impression of just the era and the stories in general?
So the although it's in comic form, I think this gave me something that I just haven't seen in a while, like visually. And it's
Mhm.
just lightsabers. Just
Yeah.
seeing new lightsabers, new Jedi, new, Force users. Because I mean, what have we watched? Bad Batch. We've watched Andor. I guess Kenobi was one, but for the most part, all the newer things, Mandalorian. A lot of it is just the things that don't involve the Jedi or specifically the Sith, right? But I think you said it. Um, well, I guess you'll say it next week when we talk about movie rankings. That the first thing you fall in love with when you watch a Star Wars is the lightsaber. So it's just it's just an amazing. it's just, it makes it different. You're in Star Wars when you see all these Jedi and all that. So I definitely, and here's a perfect
Oh,
example of
I love that
just
picture so much.
just so many Jedi here. So if you're watching the YouTube version, we got a couple screen caps from the comics here. But yeah, so definitely, I think that's it. And I felt myself just plowing through each of these comics because I just wanted to know more. And I think the medium of reading a comic is obviously different from reading a book because you
Mhm.
kind of have to be a little bit more, you have to pay attention a little bit more when you're reading a book. With this, you can kind of get a lot of it from the visuals as well.
Yeah, I totally agree that, like, for a normal book, you have to be more attentive, and I think I fall into the trap when I'm reading comic books that I don't need to be attentive, and so I'm just like, "Oh, look at that. Oh, wow." And so I found myself a
Yeah.
couple times where I was just, like, so enamored with some of the images that I was like, "Wait, who did that? What did they say?"
Yeah.
Is that I,
Sure.
like, forgot to read text closely or something like that, so I feel like I almost had the opposite problem.
Right. Yeah.
But, no, I love just the world of it. Again, being exposed to new characters, the lightsabers, of course. And we're gonna talk about maybe definitely the main characters of this series, but perhaps a few of the characters as well. It's really like a story of, obviously of light and dark, but can you guess what I'm gonna say as to why I enjoyed there's certain aspects of this story
Hmm.
that all to me.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a few characters in particular that I also liked for very specific reasons.
Hmm.
Do you know what I'm hinting at
Yes,
or
I think so because it isn't so black and white, some of the characters of where
yeah.
they fall on the spectrum of the light side and dark side.
Yes.
Particularly Skier, I think is one of them.
Mhm.
He Skier is the Trandoshan Jedi that is basically having issues keeping with the Force. It sounds like, and it comes out that he has the DNA or the genetics of a Trandoshan is normally like their brain. Something happens to their brain where they can't hold on to the Force as much, or something like that. Which I've never seen some type of explanation like that. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing to see. But yeah, I would definitely say the gray Jedi era, aura, that's what your favorite part is here. And especially with so many of them, it kind of makes sense that not everyone's going to be exactly on one side.
Yeah. Yeah, Skier was definitely the one that kind of falls into that the most. But I think even the main character, Keith Trennis, struggles with
Hmm.
that a lot as well,
Hmm.
throughout the entire even from the beginning. And for those also that don't know, Keeve, is the Padawan of, Master Skier, the Trandoshan, for the first 2 or 3 issues,
Yeah,
maybe?
first few issues, yeah.
Yeah, and then is eventually knighted a Jedi Knight, by a fellow Jedi Knight, Avar Kriss, who is
Jedi Master.
also Jedi Master, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
who is the, marshal is that I think that
Yeah,
terminology is
that was
correct?
right, yeah.
The marshal of what's called the Starlight Beacon, which
Hmm.
is, as best as I can describe it, sort of like this, uh, space station hub for the
Hmm.
Jedi, more or less?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they use that. So I did read a couple of books before reading the comics. So basically, the Starlight Beacon is the kind of a space station specifically for the Jedi to be able to go help out with like the outer rim planets, and being able to go kind of around everywhere in the Republic, and not just at the core or whatever. So that's kind of the reason behind it. In the first novel, Light of the Jedi, that was kind of the beginning of the Starlight Beacon, and I mean, there was a whole like ceremony to commemorate it and everything like that. So that was kind of one of the starts of the Light of the Jedi and of the High Republic series here. So, but yeah, so yeah, she is one of the main characters also in the book. Avar Kriss is her name,
Mhm.
as you mentioned. So she is definitely a very important figure in the Jedi's at this time. And I don't remember if she is part of the Jedi Council. It didn't seem like it, because it, or did it? What did you I
It
think she
doesn't
did.
feel like she is. It feels
Yeah.
like she's, like, on the outside, at least it almost feels
Mhm.
like she answers to, oh,
Was it
what was the
Stellan?
Definitely Stellan, who is on
Stellan
the
Kios or something like that?
yeah, I think it's
Kios?
Geos with a I
Or
think it's
Geos, yeah, 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 maybe it was, yeah.
Stellan Geos, who's, like, a Jedi council member who she kind of answers to. Then there's
Mhm.
also another Jedi who's is, like, on her level or maybe even right above her,
Mhm.
um, and I his name is
The
escaping me.
Maru?
Yes, the one who's
Yeah,
always
Maru.
meditating.
Mhm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He's the one that's always on Starlight Beacon, I believe.
Right, right,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is that even Chris is an example. Avar Chris, the marshal of the Beacon, is an example of a character who, and not so much early on in the issues that we read, but as we get deeper and deeper into it, you kind of like experience her really getting frustrated. Very
Mhm,
much like
yes.
Qui Gon, actually. I would compare it to kind of
Yeah.
getting frustrated with the decisions or maybe lack of decisions of the
Mhm.
council, and kind of like wanting to take things into her own hands, and like journeying
Right.
and tiptoeing a little close to the dark side. Not,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
maybe not the dark side, but like giving into anger and frustration. So
Right.
um, there's kind of that theme of greatness kind of riddled throughout these,
Mhm.
which
What I
again,
really
I
what
like.
I what I really liked about Avar Kriss in this one, in The Light of the Jedi, she's the and for those who don't know, she's, like, the main character on Light of the Jedi, she's the blonde,
Mhm.
woman that's in the, on the cover there. But she is very much on the light side. She in that book, she is very much like the one that everyone she's like the go-to person. She's Jordan in the fourth quarter. She is the one that everyone goes to for help, So to see to see this side of her in the comic was actually really interesting to me because again, I the only version I have seen of her is the do-gooder. But to see her kind of go against the Jedi Council's wishes, essentially to go after, to try to do what she needs to do. I thought that was just something I was just like, "Oh, this is really exciting." And like I said, I plowed through these comics like I didn't realize it. Again, I think it was because it was the Jedi's. I think it was the all the lightsabers. Here's a lightsaber battle between
Yeah,
Avar
and
and
Kiev.
Kiev, which was crazy, too crazy to see like the two green lightsabers, connecting.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, the moment in towards the end of the
Mhm.
issues where, I think it's Lorna D who is
Mhm.
the evil Twi'lek,
Yes.
at least for the later issues that we read, that I think Avar Chris, like, almost gives in to wanting to strike her down, and I think
Mhm.
this is the scene where, hope this isn't, like, too much of a spoiler, where Kiev
Yeah.
is like, "No, we're still Jedi, you can't just kill her," you know?
Right, yeah. Because
Af
Skier in earlier, issues did do that. You know?
Right.
Yeah, when there were some Nihil leftovers, he was and Nihil again are the bad dudes here. Also the bad guys in the Light of the Jedi. So I think at least in phase one, that's the Nihil. That's who we're after, right?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and this is there's a screen cap of Lorna D here, and I gotta say they make Twi'leks look real scary with those teeth though. Like I
Yeah,
don't remember Hera ever because Hera's a Twi'lek, right? So I don't
yeah.
remember Hera or Ula the dancer from Return of the Jedi or from Jabba's palace. I don't remember them looking that scary. So I don't know what part of Ryloth that she's from.
It's all that back to grain that they've been harvesting. She's been taking some for herself.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, it's very yeah. So no, I really enjoyed the story. Um, we don't have to go into like every single panel here, but I mean the eventually we come to find that uh yeah that
This is what
yeah
you were
here's a
just
good one too yeah
referencing,
yeah
yeah.
this is what I was referencing yeah where Skier actually slices up slices up a Nihil really good here so it's just you don't see that this is the kind of stuff you don't see like Jedi kind of going off the handle
Mhm.
and to see that in the comic form is pretty cool actually.
Yeah. This actually, made me want to learn more about the Nihil too.
Mhm.
I felt like I was getting kind of, like, thrown into a middle of the story, which had already been established, which I don't mind, but also I'm after finishing the series of comics we read, I was like, "Dang, I gotta go back and, like, read about
Mhm.
how the Nihil came about," which
Right, yeah.
I also find the name interesting. I mentioned this to you before we
Mhm.
started the podcast. Uh, Nihil or, like, nihilism is, like, the belief in nothing.
Oh,
So,
interesting. And
yeah.
you know where their, like, space station is stationed? No space.
Exactly.
There's no
Yeah.
space, right?
Yeah, there's even a scene in this series of comics where, is it Surratt or Turak? There's
Yeah, there's 2, like, twin Jedi that
yes,
are essentially one, it seems like, right?
right, and I don't know which one it is, but one of them gets lost in, like, I guess, like, a void of nothingness almost,
Mm,
and they
mhm.
both have, like, the, capability to sense one another,
Yeah,
um, and so they both get, like, basically frozen and, like, lost
yeah,
in nothingness more or less, so,
yeah. That's interesting,
I
yeah, and that's not a coincidence, they knew what they were doing with that one.
oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I also wanted to look up what the names Surratt and Tarak mean, because
Mhm.
obviously they're twins and, like, one name is spelled forwards and the other name is the same
Right, yeah.
spelled backwards, but I didn't know if the name had any significance or not. I'd be
Right, yeah.
curious to find that out. Something else we didn't talk about yet is that for the first few issues, it's really not the Nihil that are posing the imminent threat, at least it's not perceived that way. At least I didn't take it that way for the first few
Correct.
issues. It's more so this, like, amorphous, like, poison ivy-esque being with, what is it almost looks like a giant green sarlacc,
Yes, 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 yes.
and it's called the Dringar. Am I pronouncing that
I
correctly?
think that's correct, yeah.
And it, like, feeds on people, but only by, like, capturing them, like, intertwining its vine arms into
Yeah.
them, and then, like, taking their essence, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. It
So it
reminded me of what did it remind me of? Like, I mean, 'cause it was going I mean, it was pretty graphic. It was going, like, into their mouth, into their nose,
yeah,
just kinda sucking the essence, like you said, out of them, and kind of changing them from the inside out, and I think one of the cool things that they introduced here was, because they had to try to get to the root of this particular plant. I mean, it's a plant, right? That's what it looks
yeah,
like. Um, but the Kiev, I think, eventually tries to purposely gets purposely gets caught, so she's able to try to figure out where to go and where the route is and stuff like that. So it's just a kind of a neat little thing that they did there that maybe maybe in a movie wouldn't really work too well, but in the comic form, I think you
yeah.
can get away with, right?
Yeah, there's almost like millions of these things that are all like collectively one hive mind is how
Hmm.
I kind of read into it.
Right.
And that they're like the beginning being of them was it the primordial being or
I
something
think
like
that's
that?
something like that, right?
And that's how, as you just mentioned, that's like what Keeve's goal is when she allows the Dringar to when I think it's like still attached to Skier at that
Hmm.
time when he's in the med bay of the Starlight Beacon,
Mm-hmm.
and she, like, she enters and allows herself to, like, be taken over by it,
Yeah.
and that's when that was the part where I was kinda, like, sketchy on how this all actually
Right.
works,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
as she's taken over, she, like, sees into the mind or the hive mind, and that's how they're able to locate its location.
Hmm.
Anyways, not to go too in depth to the story, but
Yeah.
it was just, like, concepts that felt very similar to something I'd seen in science fiction,
Hmm.
like in other like Alien-esque, where they come, they grab the people, they like take the energy from them. That's what
Right. Right.
this part of the
Like the Matrix.
series. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and all comes back in
It
circle.
all comes back.
Yep.
It all begins and ends with Keanu Reeves. We all know this already.
That's right.
So yeah, yeah, it was. I enjoyed this so much. In fact, I'm for those that don't know, I'm leaving the country for a week, and I'm probably going to either download new High Republic comics on my phone prior to leaving, or I might just make a quick stop at Barnes& and Noble and grab a
Yeah.
few more for my
Yeah.
trip, so
I'm
we'll
saying
see.
if you get Light of the Jedi too, you might as well.
Yeah, 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 I
Yeah.
probably will actually, because
Yeah.
that's again, that's the book that kind of kicks off the whole series of High Republic novels and comics, and the first phase of the High Republic stuff. So,
Yeah.
yes, and Gibbo's also making a note that to download Rebels season 4, which we will be covering not on next week's episode, but on the following week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Um, Briefly before we kind of begin the process of wrapping things up, um, do we want to touch on a few of our favorite characters?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's pretty easy for me. Yeah, Keeve Trennis, the hero of the entire comic, I think. She definitely gets my vote of the favorite one there. I mean, just so cool seeing her development through it. I mean, because she developed quite a bit.
Mhm.
I feel from the beginning, just within the 15 issues. And what I like about her is that she was in doubt a lot. You know, a lot of the, and it's from her point of view. That's a lot from of this series is from her point of view. So you could see that there's a lot of doubt in her mind, and if she should be here, if she made the right decisions, things like that. Normally, when you look at a Jedi, you think that they're confident, they know what to do, they know exactly, the steps that they need to take in order to accomplish the goal. With her, she was very like, oh, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. So to kind of see that vulnerability, kind of, it was cool. It was cool to see a Jedi not quite sure of themselves, only to kind of come out on top at the end. So, so definitely Keeve Trennis gets my vote.
Yeah. Yeah, she really does develop so much in these 15 issues. I mean, like you said, she has so much uncertainty at the beginning that by the end of the 15 issues, she is like the voice of reason. She's the one preventing Master Chris from doing
Mhm.
something she'll regret. She's the one who's
Right, yeah.
trying to save her former master. Well, I guess still her master in a way, but
Yeah.
Master Skier. So she
And
goes
she had
from
to
the
go undercover too.
yeah.
She
Oh
was
my goodness. I was gonna tell you there is an issue in this set of 15. I think it's like issue 9, I wanna say, where it just opens up by jumping like slightly ahead in time, and she looks like a Sith.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the first thing I thought when I saw the image, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Wait, she turned to the dark side?" But then you find out over the next few pages that it's basically her posing herself as a member of the Nihil in order to like
Right, yeah.
infiltrate them, and but
Yep.
I saw that initially, and the it's also a little bit of like a clickbait title. It's like "A Jedi No More" is the name
Yeah, right, yeah.
of the issue, and I'm like,
It should
"Why
it
did she betray the Jedi?"
it should be a Jedi no more, wink wink. That should be the
Yeah.
subtitle.
I will say they definitely got me. I was like, "I don't understand how she could have done that." So, anyways, yeah, she's a great character. Probably the most impactful character for me personally as well. We mentioned this as well before we started recording, but I think for both of us, Keeve was probably our favorite character of this series. A couple of the other ones that I wanted to point out, maybe just a couple honorable mentions, and then another favorite of mine. I wanted to give an honorable mention to Orla Jarini. I don't know
Oh,
if I'm
okay.
saying her name right. The Wayseeker. I liked
Yes, 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 yeah.
that concept and that idea of like not being tied to anything, just following the Force. It
Mhm,
felt
mhm.
very much like some of the characters we see in Rogue One, for example. We already mentioned characters like Avar Chris, and even Surratt and Tarak. I
Yeah.
I liked, both of those characters a lot as well. But then the one, of course, that stuck with me apart from Keeve was also, Master Skier, because I feel like you get to experience his, um, not only physical pain because he is missing an arm for I think the entire duration
Mhm.
of the issues, excluding the not real arm he has
Yeah,
for, part of the issues, earlier on, but, more importantly, you get to experience his emotional pain,
yeah.
and it's kind of I felt very sad for him because
Mhm.
really, apart from Keeve, who's the focal point of the issues, and it's kind of her growth from Padawan who's uncertain to someone who is reliable, who can be trusted, who is there to turn people and steer them in the right direction. Um, it's really also a story about Skier and kind of
Yeah.
his I don't want to say the opposite path, but kind of his losing the ability to maintain a connection to the Force. Um, it felt very sad to me.
Yeah.
It was like, here's this master who not only did he lose his arm, but now he's, like, slowly fading. There's even a point where, um, Chris feels like she can't trust him anymore, and so she, like, takes his lightsaber from him, and I
Yeah,
was like,
that was a rough scene there.
"No!"
That was a rough
Yeah,
scene.
yeah, but I resonated a lot with kinda his journey and kinda his even in the end, he kind of, perseveres and pushes on even though he knows that connection he has to the Force is dwindling. I feel like he definitely struggles early on in the issues, kind of with, uh, keeping a grip on his anger, especially when he's kinda taken over by the Drengar. But I feel like his character also has growth
Mhm.
in the sense that he learns to kind of I don't wanna say deal with it, but kind of just, I don't know, I feel like he grows a lot as a character and that he knows he's declining emotionally and mentally and his connection with the Force, but he doesn't let that stop him in his quest
Yeah. To
for
do what's right.
helping the order and doing what's right, yeah. I mean, there's a scene with Keeve where, she's basically, like, giving he's meditating, he's kind of really, gloom and glum, and she
Yeah.
gives him a pep talk that he'd given to her, like, 8
Yeah,
issues
yeah.
earlier, and so I was like, "Oh, I like that a lot that
Yeah, yeah.
they brought it all back around." So, not only is this set of issues the story of Keeve Trennis, but it's also the story of her master, Master Skier, and kind of
Yeah.
his redemption as well, if you will, so I liked him a lot, me
Yeah.
personally. Well, any other characters you wanted to touch on or any, closing wrap-up thoughts on just the issues as a whole or even the High Republic as a whole?
Yeah. I think this really got me going here for to get more of the High Republic content now. I know we've you and I have talked about this for a while. Like we need to learn a little bit more about High Republic. I think this was a pretty good jumping point into it. Although it's like smack dab in the middle of phase one, maybe there is, like you said, some books and other comics maybe we need to read beforehand. But we got. I think this was a good way to get really excited about this era. And I mean, we've got a ton, and like we've said before, there's a ton of stuff if you want to look for it. There's comic books, there's books, there's graphic novels. There's a ton of things here in the High Republic that we could learn a lot more about the era. And now I'm definitely going to be starting to read up on all of it now.
Yeah, dude, I would love a full-length feature film in the High Republic era. I think that the James Mangold one
Yeah, I was about to say,
is but I
is
think
that
that's
one?
pre-High Republic. I
Is
think
it
that's
okay?
like Dawn of the Jedi.
Okay.
And then the Filoni one is New Republic, and
Hmm.
then the one with
Ray
Rey.
is obviously after. Yeah,
Right, so someday we might get a High Republic era full-length film.
we should do a like who would you cast as Avar Chris? Who would
Ooh.
you cast? I think that would be a fun thing to do.
Oh, that would be a fun mental exercise. I'd have to
Yeah,
think about that one, honestly,
yeah,
and I'd probably have to read Light of the Jedi first
true.
just to get a better
Yeah,
feel for the characters, so, uh, give us a not if Bob has anything to do with it.
yeah. Bob's like, no more movies.
Bob, get out of here, Bob, we want more
Yeah,
Star Wars.
you, Bob and Liam, get over there in the corner.
All the Star Wars haters can just, go elsewhere. Well, on next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, wow, I've never had difficulty saying that before. On next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, which in full disclosure, we recorded previously to the recording of this one, we will be breaking down our full list of movie rankings, which is something that we've wanted to do for a while, and we finally got a chance to record that one earlier this week. So that one will release. What would that be? August
Third?
4th, 3rd. Thursday, whatever the first Thursday in August is when that episode will release. So be on the lookout for that. That also does include both Solo and Rogue One. So Joey and I will be ranking our favorite Star Wars movies, each of us individually, our
Mhm.
personal preferences from 11 all the way to number one, our favorites. So
Well, and let's just say there may be some surprises in there.
yep. Phantom Menace. I put it at number one.
Yep,
Not
we knew
really.
it. Rise of Skywalker, S
Rise
tier.
of
Let's go.
Rise of Skywalker is S tier. What?
What's S mean? I'm sorry. Family friendly. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, you gotta tune into next week's episode to find out what our full rankings are. We had a lot of fun recording that one. So if you haven't if you I hope you get a chance to listen to it. Is what I'm trying to
Yes,
say.
and make sure you block out some time because we took a little while.
Yeah, it was a solid hour-long podcast. I feel like we've been doing pretty good about doing the 45 to 50 minutes recently, but that one, you just get 2 Star Wars fans talking about Star Wars movies,
Movies, yeah.
rolls away from us a little bit, so, but yeah, be on the lookout for that one coming out next week, as well as a lot of new shorts, that'll be coming out here in the following week or 2 as well. Which also I should mention as we close this episode of the podcast, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, that is where you can check out those shorts, which are kind of, in many ways, sort of condensed versions of various episodes of the podcast. Which, of course, you can also watch every episode of the podcast here on YouTube as well. If you're not already subscribed, definitely do so. We would appreciate it very, very much. We want to thank you for 150 subscribers, by the way.
Woohoo!
Let's go.
We did it.
Shout out to the 150 of you that are subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. We love y'all very, very much. And of course, you can listen to us at Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as anywhere else you get your podcasts for the audio version of Hoth Hangout. Additionally, check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Hoth Hangout on each of those various platforms. Again, more shorts content coming on a couple of those as well. Any last closing thoughts, Joey, before we call this one good?
It's everywhere. Star Wars is everywhere, y'all. We dove into something that we never even seen before, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm telling you, if you go look for it, you'll find it. So
Yes.
Go Star Wars.
Definitely. And again, I think the process of that is like a little bit uncomfortable at first, especially for someone who has like loved something for so long, to kind of introduce yourself to a brand new aspect of it. But I love doing it too. So thank you for doing that with me and going on this High Republic journey with me, Joey, and all of you listening. Well, again, this about does it. So, again, actually, if you have any recommendations for us for other comics we should read, Star Wars comics, please let us know that down in the comments of the video version of the podcast as well. Thanks so much, as always, for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Special shouts to producer Gibbo. We appreciate you so very, very much. Shouts to Gibbo. Let Gibbo have some love down in the comments as well. Better see some I Heart Gibbo down in the YouTube comments. And again, thanks for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and may the Force be with you.